the majority of third-party managers are terrible. They feel like as they get bigger, they can do it better. And they eventually hire people, and then they eventually fire people, and then they eventually get frustrated. But eventually they're so large that they just keep it going on. It's a thankless task. Property management is. People, if you're doing well, that's because the market's good. It's not because of you guys. If you're doing bad, well, that's because you guys suck and you're not doing things right. And that's, you guys don't know how to do the basics or something of that nature. So I've seen this again and again. So we've seen probably about a 20% reduction in apartment values from the peak of where they were to where they are now. We're seeing transaction volume dry up. There's just not a lot of deals that are actually going. We actually are starting to see more foreclosures. Now the lenders, rightly so, they extend and pretend, because if the lenders can extend the period, they're hoping the Fed drops the rates. If the Fed drops the rates, that will save a lot of these owners, and they can then refinance the deals. They can make their numbers work. I mean, we had one deal where our debt service went up, it was floating rate, went up $1.5 million in the space of 18 months. It was a 756 bed student housing deal. So, we definitely know that that's across the board. And the other thing that was interesting is your caps. So these floating rate mortgages, they have these interest rate caps. When we first got our interest rate caps, they were like $75,000 for an interest rate cap. And that just simply tops the interest rate that you would have to pay. So it's kind of like insurance. So in case interest rates really go up. Well, those same caps were like almost $500,000. So tremendous difference in the capital markets. And so now you have a ton of loans maturing. And there's a lot of money sitting on the sidelines, billions of dollars of funds waiting to pounce on these distressed deals. And the more you learn, the better you can get at solving problems. I remember an example. We had an apartment complex where they came back and told us the entire subfloor had been rotted out and it needed to replace. It was like $200,000. And it was a tremendous amount of money on that deal. And we didn't want to do a capital call. So I put overalls on, climbed underneath the building, and took a camera with me and a flashlight. And I discovered that there was one section of the beam that was actually rotten. The rest of it was fine. And I confronted the contractor and the engineer about it, and they admitted, yeah, you could just replace the one. So from $200,000 down to $10,000. So I've noticed that contractors and engineers have a tendency to overscope. And if you're not willing to get dirty and go look at it and see it for yourself and ask questions, that's just one example. I can go on and on about examples where I've seen this in action. Well, it's funny. I actually had a list of these, and some of the former employees will probably tell you about me making them do book reports and things of that nature. But one of the things I always used to say is over-communicate. The only thing certain about communication is the illusion that it's taken place. And again, we see companies, they'll tell, I told them to do it, but that's not the same thing as getting them to really understand it. Often we don't need to be taught, we need to be reminded. I think that was Winston Churchill that said that. I was at a property once and I was talking to one of the property managers and I said, what's the dumbest thing we make you do? And she goes, really? No. I said, what drives you nuts? She goes, oh, this month-end closeout process. It takes forever to do this at the end of each month. I said, give me that report. She gave me this long checklist. I went back to the corporate office. I walked over to the training department and I said, hey, why don't we make them do this? And she looked at it and said, we don't need that. Accounting makes them do it. So I took the list, walked over to accounting, and I said, hey, why do you make them do it? And they said, we don't need that. Training does. The no asshole rule. I can't say this enough. In organizations, you're going to have some people who are very effective, but they're assholes. They're terrible. You know what? It's very hard sometimes to fire those people because they're getting the results. But if you want to hurt a company, have a bunch of those in your company. And long term, it's going to do more damage than good. You're better off just not having them. Part of being a leader is knowing about people and understanding and realizing that, hey, that's not the way you treat people. You're not any better than they are. So I think a lot of people get ego gets in the way. I think reading books can help you. But what I tell people a lot of times is you can read all the books about swimming you want, but until you jump in the pool, you don't know how to swim. And it would be much better for you to be a small partner in a small duplex or something like that than it would be for you to jump into some massive real estate investment that you know nothing of, and more than likely you're going to be taken advantage of. I'm excited about the future, and I love AI. I'm a big into ChatGPT. I took several courses on it, trying to figure out how to use it in my business. I think the automation part of it is going to be huge. There's a lot of people that are going to be very terrified of it, no doubt. But I think you're going to have companies that use it, and then people that are bankrupt. That's how it's going to happen.